your election headquarters. This is Texoma Politics Now.
Hello, Texoma. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Nicholas Kwalik. Well, 1 week ago today, the Attorney General reported no Russian collusion by the president or his campaign following the completion of the Mueller report. He did, however, make no decision on obstruction of justice. Now, President Trump has his eyes on Democrats like House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, sparring with his Republican colleagues who want him to step down as chairman because of his repeated claims there was evidence of Trump campaign collusion with Russia, something the Mueller investigation reportedly did not find. Now, Schiff stands behind his claims, and Democrats have demanded the full Mueller report to be released by Tuesday. Now with more perspective is Eliza Collins, political reporter for USA Today. Eliza, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Now, since the Mueller report has been released, President Trump and his administration have been taking quite the victory lap as it appears around Washington. Now, even though the full report has yet to be released, is this a victory for the Trump administration?
Yes. It's an undeniable victory for the Trump administration. Basically, he was cleared of collusion, and Robert Mueller did not make he basically did not decide if the president obstructed justice, but the attorney general said, well, if there was no crime with collusion, then he would not rule on obstruction of justice. And so it's a big victory for the president. This has been hanging over his head for years, and he's now basically in a position of strength, Republicans say, where he does not have to deal with the Mueller report. Now, they're not letting this go away. They're now going on the defense or on the offense, trying to attack Democrats here who said that there was evidence of collusion, but there's no denying that this is a big win for the president.
And I think it would be safe to say the summary isn't the bombshell report some Democrats hoped it would be. How much damage do you believe was done to the Democratic Party from this, especially as we get closer to the 2020 election?
You know, I don't think it's a ton of damage. I've been talking to some strategists who say the Democrats won back the House not on Russia, not on Mueller, but on health care and on the economy and on jobs. And if they stick to that message, they think that they'll do just fine. Of course, they are disappointed that this is not the bombshell that they expected. But they do say that they won on those kitchen table issues, and that's what they need to be talking about ahead of the election. The other thing is that the president got this big win on Sunday, and on Monday his administration came out and said that they no longer wanted to defend Obamacare in courts, which changed the conversation to health care, which Democrats feel like it puts the ball right back into their court. So they were actually excited about the change of conversation this week because they could then be united around protecting the Affordable Care Act rather than divided on what to do next. Do they impeach the president without very much evidence? Do they continue to investigate him? Do they move on? And there's factions of the Democratic Party that all feel different ways on this, but they can all be united about other issues like health care.
And since this is your beat, here's the big question: what's next?
Well, we're waiting to see the full report. Democrats have said that they expect it. They're willing to subpoena it for it if they don't get that. But the Attorney General's office has said that they're going through it right now. It looks like it's hundreds of pages, and they will send over some sort of redacted version. Now, Democrats, I don't expect to see the report and then shut up. They're going to dig in. They'll find things that they don't like. I think that this is going to go on for a while, but there is no longer the Mueller investigation overarching theme. So they can't say we're waiting for Mueller to find out what's next. Now they'll have to get this report and see what they want to do with it. They still have investigations of their own in Congress, and many lawmakers in both parties would like to just move on. But Republicans have also announced they're going to open a separate investigation basically into the investigators. They're saying that there was some bias against the president early on at the FBI, and so they're using their power in the Senate to investigate the investigators. In the House, the Democrats are continuing to investigate the president, so this is not going away.
All right, Eliza Collins with USA Today. Thank you so much, Eliza.
Thank you.
And for more insight and analysis on a local level now, we are joined by former Wichita County District Attorney Ed Lane. Ed, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. More than happy to be here.
Were you surprised by the findings of the Mueller report, and do you believe the full report should be released?
I wasn't really that surprised because I never saw any evidence of collusion myself with the Russians from the news reports. But as to whether it will actually be released, there's a debate going on between Attorney General Barr now. He said he needs to redact grand jury stuff, which is confidential under the law, and also stuff that might be classified information, which would be national security Jerry Nadler, who is the chairman of the House Committee on Justice, wants the entire report, and he gave him a deadline this Tuesday, April 2nd. So it'll be interesting what happens, a big showdown probably April 2nd, see what Nadler will do. He's already said he's going to call Barr and Mueller before his committee because they're going to do their own separate investigation. So I don't have any problem with it legally being released. The president has said he doesn't have any problem with it, assuming they make the redactions for the legal reasons. The grand jury testimony is confidential.
Mm-hmm. Now, before the report came out, some people compared it to the Watergate years. You've lived through both. Any comparisons that you see?
Well, the main difference I see, Watergate, 5 guys who worked for the committee to re-elect President Nixon were caught red-handed inside Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate hotel complex, and they were stealing top documents. So those were felonies. And Nixon's problem was nobody knew if he knew beforehand what happened, but what happened afterwards, evidence was brought forth that he covered it up. He paid hush money to people to keep quiet about it and tried to get one agency to stop another agency from investigating. So that's how Nixon got in trouble for obstruction of justice. But we don't have that in this situation, so I'd say that's the major difference between Watergate and what we've got here today.
And that is a complicated matter, as you said, obstruction of justice. How do, with your expertise, how do prosecutors determine criminal intent when it comes to obstruction? And can there be obstruction of justice with no underlying crime?
It is possible for there to be obstruction without an underlying crime, although it's a difficult case to prove, much more difficult that way than that is if there is an underlying crime. But legally, there's no requirement there has to be an underlying crime. And as a prosecutor, we always say during jury selection, how do you prove intent to the jury? You know, how do you know somebody intentionally did something? Well, it's from there. You have to infer intent from a person's actions and or words. So in other words, if somebody subpoenas some documents, legal documents, if they were to subpoena me for those records and I was to go back and burn them up, you could tell if it was my intent, probably, that obviously that was my intent to obstruct justice by burning up the evidence they wanted. That's just one example. And Nixon's problem was they got him on intent to do that because he told the paid hush money to some of the Watergate burglars. And of course, he wouldn't turn over the famous Nixon tapes. And the Supreme Court ruled, though, later that he had to. And once they ruled that and he had to turn them over, then he resigned just a few weeks later.
And we hope he wouldn't burn any papers. but on that note, really quickly before we go, one point, what do you find so fascinating about what's happened with this whole Mueller investigation?
Well, it's the first time in my lifetime I've seen anything like this happen. It's really it is fascinating. This is different than Watergate, and of course Clinton went through his impeachment deal, and this is kind of the third time a president has been under fire. So I think this is one of the watershed moments in American history, certainly in my lifetime. It's fascinating to see what's going to happen next because it looks like Nadler and Adam Schiff, the leading Democrats, aren't going to be satisfied with this, and some of them are still wanting to go for impeachment. But Nancy Pelosi says she's against impeachment. So it's kind of a soap opera day to day. What's going to happen next?
Yes, only time will tell.
Yes.
Ed Lane, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.